So, I always use these colors, and for those of you that know my work, I do consider myself a colorist. I think I get a lot of flesh color, a good flesh color. Based on the person, it varies. I think I have a lot of range in the colors, but you'll see this is a very tiny little palette. So I have white, yellow ochre, raw sienna, permanent red, scarlet sienna, alizarin, raw umber, red umber, Payne's gray, cobalt blue, and that's it. These are all the sorry colors because they're handmade. You can feel the grain in some of them. They react differently. These are really old-time colors, and you get to know them, and they're quite beautiful. Okay, so you'll notice that I'm working on one of these. So I tone them before I paint because I always want to work from a mid-tone. If I use white here, you can't really tell. If I put a white here, you can really tell. So the value relationships are easier to judge on this mid-tone. And eventually my palette will have that. So what you've seen me do is work with black. I remember when they teach you math, they say guess and check. This is guess and check. You just start the proportions and you move things around and it's guess and check and you sort of look at the spaces. And I walk with my brush through these spaces. I figure out how much distance with the nose, the lips, and it's still very big. And then when I have a line drawing in, I will take some turpentine, wipe my brush, and then get a little thinner line or correct like that. So that's very helpful. So now that I have it drawn in somewhat, and I have a sense of Anki, I'm going to start blocking it in with the masses of not only shadow and light, but the colors. If I took all of Anki's skin and I put it in a blender, and if I make one color like her neutral flesh, and I add some cool and some warmth to it, it really gets to be very drastic differences that you don't need to go with a real green. I mix up this big clump of light, average light, and then I'm either going to choose raw umber, red umber, or Payne's gray, or cobalt blue to darken it and neutralize it. And it works great. And it keeps the integrity of the color because raw umber, burnt umber, and cobalt blue are they're not strong personalities. Thank you. So I'm just going to tone this in very quickly to get a color. And I want to add some different colors to it. I want to add maybe a little yellow here, or maybe a little blue. So when you add these different colors to your background, you get some air. It doesn't look quite so flat. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to mix some of her hair colors. And I'm holding up. I start with raw sienna and hold up, and I can see that I have to gray it with some raw umber. So raw umber is beginning to take a theme on here, which is very helpful because I like themes. I like echoes in paintings. And raw umber will be an echo. It'll be a little bit in the background, it'll be a little in the flesh tone, it'll be a little in the things, so that it's easy on the eye. I'm judging this closer up, and I'm pretty good. I can see that it's going to work. So the next thing I'm going to do is try to get the background, the hair against the background, so I can judge what's going on there. So you may ask yourself, why am I painting everything before the flesh? So I want to make sure I get everything else related before I go into it. And now I'm going to try to get her clothing. So I'm going to go with my raw umber again. And you can see I'm mixing with my palette knife because you mix more paint and you mix better with a palette knife. So you can see we're doing relatively well. I need a little darker. See, that sort of works good, so you can't always anticipate exactly. I'm going to add a little black for the patches on the scarf. This is one of those colors for clothing that you don't use in flesh. So I'm putting out some Prussian blue and some cadmium, and we're going to get that sort of greeny feeling of the scarf. And then the rest of it, I'm just going to give it a little burnt umber and white, just to tie it together, and then I'm going to go into the flesh. So I want to keep this simple. So scarlet sienna, raw sienna, and then even though Anki came from a land of health and outside world, she's been living in New York, so we added blue to her. So I'm going to take a little loose one. I think I will try a little red umber, like the permanent red, a little more yellow, and see, because of my white background, this is going to be much harder. Okay, you can see that's not bad for places. It's a good starting place. So I'm going to start with that. And I'm too warm here for the flesh. So I'm going to put a little more blue in it. And this gives me the opportunity to redraw this area. I'm starting with the glabella and getting the shape of that glabella. And that looks pretty good against the hair color. I'm pretty confident that my color for the flesh is close, so I'm going to mix some shadows. I'm going to start with the neck shadow because it's surrounded by other colors, so it should be easier to get. And I'm using raw umber, my favorite here, to go in and see if I can get that shadow. So I'm trying to get the shape of the eyebrow. And I'm just indicating them a little bit. And then I can go with the shadow here. And this shadow will help me draw, again, the shape of the glabella, which is basically this wonderful shape that defines Anki. But you can see I put this shadow in, I used the, Mr. Raw Umber. But Mr. Raw Umber needs a little work, so I'm adding some cobalt blue to him. And look at that, it starts going back. Ah, yes. She has a little delicacy around her eyes. She has that little blue. And then we have to add a little more raw sienna. So you can see that I'm always searching for color. And that's what makes flesh work. And now I look at this, and I'm getting this shadow pattern. But I see, you know what? It's not warm enough. There's a little red in here. So I'm going to tickle this with a little red. And that helps a little bit bring that out. So now I'm getting this beautiful bone structure here. But I notice that I have too much space for Anki here. So fortunately, I can bring down the eyebrows. So I'm very conscious now of the eye cavity. And this has to be brought down. So you have to be very flexible and make corrections all the time. This is something you can only be wrong at first. You can't be right. You can only be right through corrections. And that's the only way that you know where to go and find your way is from being wrong. So get comfortable with it. So the first thing I'm doing, because you can't do everything at one time, I'm getting the shape of this. And I notice I don't really have the values right yet for the color, but I want to get the shape. And everything has a personality, so it sort of helps to talk to yourself when you're doing this and go, oh, I'm round. And what you try to do with your brush or your pencil is to move it as if you're touching the person so that you can see them. Now I'm going to paint the sclera, which is a white eye. I'm using some blue, yellow ochre, and a little red. And the sclera is a round ball where the iris 6. And this is very helpful because this gives me the shape in there, and I can figure out where the eye is. And Anki has blue-green eyes. This lid, because of its thickness, is casting a shadow. And there's a little bit of a highlight. Around the eye is a slightly darker rim of color. And then the pupil is just black. Opposite the highlight is the lighter part of the transparency of the eye, or the translucence. So I'm going to add some green into that. We'll add some of the green of the scarf. I'm going to get some color under this eye. And then Anki's nose is just a little warmer. So I'm getting red here, a little more red. Okay, so we can see that Anki's coming here. Like that. No, but I just want to get that beautiful red, and then I'll go to the other side of the eye. Now, this is a good example of where the colors really start to change a lot. You can see the shadow starts to turn violet. And I'm going to add some raw sienna. And I'm looking at that shape, so Anki's shape comes up a little higher. Now, when I fan, I'm fanning for a couple of reasons. I'm fanning to get rid of the glare, and I'm fanning because it adds a nice texture to the paint, but I'm just feathering it. So this is a relatively clean brush, and it's not going to get any dirtier. I'm just hitting it very slightly, and I let the paint sit for a little while before I hit it. Now you'll see a lot of works by Titian here, and he used his finger a lot. Okay, you're free one more.